A struggling mechanic with an empty stomach helps a wealthy stranger fix his vintage Mustang. But when he notices the worn-out ring on her finger, his entire world shifts. What happens next will change both their lives forever. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the emotional twists coming next. The broken down Mustang. The Texas sun hung low in the sky, painting the dusty streets of Cedar Ridge in shades of burnt orange. Lena Carter wiped the sweat from her brow with the back of her grease-stained hand, her stomach growling loud enough to compete with the hum of the old ceiling fan. 2 days. 2 days since she'd had a proper meal, and the last of her groceries, a half-empty jar of peanut butter and a stale loaf of bread, had run out that morning. She tightened the last bolt on Mrs. Henderson's pickup truck, her fingers trembling slightly from exhaustion. This was the only job she'd managed to scrape together all week, and even then, Mrs. Henderson had haggled her down to half her usual rate. The faded Carter's auto repair sign above the shop, doors swayed in the hot breeze, a silent reminder of her father's legacy, one she was dangerously close to losing. The bank's last notice was still sitting on the counter, unopened. She didn't need to read it to know what it said. Then, like a mirage shimmering in the heat, a car pulled up in front of the shop. Not just any car, a 1967 Ford Mustang, cherry red and gleaming under the fading sunlight. Lena's breath caught. That car was a dream on wheels, the kind of machine her dad used to talk about restoring one day. The driver's door swung open and a man stepped out. Tall, dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than her rent, his polished shoes crunching on the gravel. His expression was tight, frustration etched into the lines of his face as he glanced at his watch. A Rolex. Because of course it was. Lena straightened up, wiping her hands on her oil-streaked jeans. "You open?" he called out, his voice sharp with impatience. She almost laughed. "Open?" The shop had been empty for hours. "Depends," she said, crossing her arms. "What's the problem?" The man, Daniel, she'd soon learn, gestured at the Mustang. Engines choking. "I've got a meeting in Dallas by midnight." Lena exhaled through her nose. Of course he did. People like him always had somewhere more important to be. She popped the hood, the familiar scent of oil and metal filling her lungs. The engine was beautiful, but the problem was obvious. The timing belt was on its last legs. As she leaned in, Daniel's phone rang. He answered with a clipped, "Whitmore." Lena's hand stilled. Whitmore, as in Daniel Whitmore, the billionaire real estate developer who'd been buying up half the county? The man whose company had sent eviction notices to half her neighborhood? She listened as he snapped into the phone. "No, I won't lower the price. That neighborhood's prime for redevelopment." Her stomach twisted. That neighborhood was hers. The last stretch of affordable homes in Cedar Ridge, where she'd grown up, where her son walked to school, where her father had built this shop with his own hands. Daniel hung up, shoving his phone into his pocket. His gaze flickered to her hands, specifically to the thin gold band on her ring finger, scratched and dull from years of work. "You're married?" he asked, surprise coloring his tone. Lena clenched her jaw. Was. A beat of silence. Then the Mustang's engine let out a weak click, a sound she knew all too well. "Your timing belt shot," she said, straightening up. "You're not making Dallas tonight." Daniel's face darkened. "There's no way." Before he could finish, his phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen, and Lena caught a glimpse of notification before he quickly tucked it away. Foreclosure approval pending for 211 Maple Street. Her address. The air left her lungs. The bank hadn't just sent her a warning. They'd already made their decision. And the man standing in front of her, with his expensive suit and his broken-down dream car, was the reason why. The unexpected offer. The silence in the garage stretched between them, thick and heavy. Lena's fingers curled around the wrench in her hand, her knuckles whitening. She forced herself to take a slow breath, to keep her voice steady. "You're losing this place, aren't you?" Daniel asked, his tone softer now, almost careful. Lena's grip tightened. She didn't owe him an answer, didn't owe him anything. But the word spilled out anyway, sharp and bitter. "What's it to you?" Daniel exhaled, running a hand through his hair. For the first time since he'd stepped out of that Mustang, he looked less like a billionaire and more like a man who just realized he was standing on the wrong side of a fight. "I could help," he said after a moment. "Alone or you could stop tearing down homes like mine," Lena shot back. The accusation hung in the air between them. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. He didn't say anything at all. Lena turned back to the Mustang, her movements sharp, mechanical. She didn't need his pity, didn't need his guilt. She just needed to fix this damn car so he could get out of her life as fast as he crashed into it. The shop's single overhead light flickered, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Outside, the last of the daylight had faded, leaving the parking lot bathed in the dim glow of a flickering street lamp. Then a sound, tires screeching, metal crashing. Lena barely had time to turn before headlights flooded the garage, blinding her. A pickup truck swerved wildly, skidding across the gravel before slamming into the side of Daniel's Mustang with a sickening crunch. The impact sent Lena stumbling back. Daniel grabbed her arm, steadying her as the truck's engine sputtered and died. For a heartbeat, everything was still. Then the truck's door creaked open, and a man stumbled out, swaying on his feet. The smell of whiskey hit Lena before she even saw his face. Tom. Her ex-husband's bloodshot eyes locked onto hers, and a slow, sloppy grin spread across his face. "Lena," he slurred. "Fancy seeing you here." Her stomach dropped. Tom hadn't just crashed into a car. He'd crashed into Daniel Whitmore's car. Daniel stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "Are you out of your mind? You could have killed someone." Tom laughed, the sound rough and broken. "Relax, rich boy. Just a little fender bender." He waved a hand dismissively, then swayed again, catching himself on the truck's hood. Lena's pulse pounded in her ears. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not here. She grabbed Tom's arm, her fingers digging into his skin. "What the hell are you doing?" she hissed. Tom's grin faltered. His gaze flickered past her, to the Mustang, then back to her face. "Needed to talk to you," he muttered. "It's important." Lena's throat tightened. There was only one thing Tom ever considered important. "The money's gone, isn't it?" she whispered. Tom's silence was answer enough. The money, the little she'd managed to scrape together for Jake's asthma medication, tucked away in an envelope under her mattress. The money Tom had sworn he wouldn't touch. A wave of nausea rolled through her. She'd been so careful. So damn careful. Daniel was watching them, his expression unreadable. Then, without a word, he pulled out his phone and stepped away, his voice too low for her to hear. Tom leaned closer, his breath hot and sour against her ear. "Just needed a little loan, Lena. I was going to pay you back." "Get out," she snapped, shoving him away. "Get out before I call the cops." Tom's face twisted. For a second, she thought he might argue. Then his shoulders slumped, and he turned, staggering back to his truck. Lena didn't watch him leave. She couldn't. Instead, she turned back to the Mustang, to the crumpled metal and broken glass. Another mess she'd have to clean up. Another problem she'd have to solve. Daniel ended his call and walked back to her, his phone still in hand. "I had my lawyer delay the foreclosure," he said quietly. Lena froze. "Why?" Daniel met her gaze, and for the first time, she saw something in his eyes she couldn't name. Something raw. Something real. "Because my sister died waiting for help, too," he said. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Before she could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID flashed. Jake's school. Her blood ran cold. She answered, her voice barely a whisper. "Hello." The nurse's voice was calm, professional. "Ms. Carter? Jake's having another asthma attack. We've given him his inhaler, but..." Lena didn't hear the rest. The world narrowed to a single, terrifying thought. She had no money left for his medicine, and no way to get more. Secrets unraveled. Lena's fingers trembled as she clutched the phone, the nurse's words echoing in her ears. Jake couldn't breathe. The school's emergency inhaler had bought him time, but without his proper medication, the one she could no longer afford, his next attack could be worse. Far worse. She barely registered hanging up. The world around her blurred. Tom's drunken stumble, the wrecked Mustang, the flickering garage lights, all of it faded into white noise. Only one thought screamed through her mind. She had to get to her son. Daniel was speaking, his voice urgent, but the words didn't connect. Not until he stepped in front of her, blocking her path to the door. "Lena," he said firmly, "let me drive you." She blinked, reality snapping back into focus. His face was close, his dark eyes sharp with something she hadn't expected, real concern. "What?" "You're in no state to drive," he said, already pulling keys from his pocket. "And your ex just wrecked your shop's lot. My car's still drivable, barely, but it'll get us there." Us. The word hung between them. Lena wanted to refuse. Wanted to tell him she didn't need his help, his pity, his guilt. But Jake couldn't wait. "Fine," she bit out, shoving past him toward the passenger side of the damaged Mustang. The drive to Cedar Ridge Elementary was a blur of tense silence. Daniel gripped the wheel, the car shuddering with every turn, but he didn't slow down. Lena stared out the window, her nails digging into her palms. "You said your sister died waiting for help," she said suddenly, the words escaping before she could stop them. Daniel's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, asthma attack. She was 12. Our parents couldn't afford her medication either. The admission hit Lena like a physical blow. She turned to study his profile, the rigid set of his shoulders, the way his fingers flexed on the wheel. This wasn't just some rich man's guilt. This was personal. "Why buy out the neighborhood then?" she asked, voice low. "If you know what it's like." "Because I didn't know," he cut in, sharp. "Not until tonight." His gaze flicked to her. "Not until I saw that ring on your finger and realized you were someone's was before you were someone's mom." Lena's breath caught. The car screeched to a halt in front of the school. She was out before it fully stopped, sprinting through the doors toward the nurse's office. Jake sat on a cot, his small frame hunched over, struggling to draw air. His face lit up when he saw her. "Mommy." The wheeze in his voice shattered her. She dropped to her knees, pulling him close, her hand rubbing slow circles on his back like the doctors had taught her. "I'm here, baby. Just breathe with me, okay? In and out." Over Jake's shoulder, she saw Daniel hover in the doorway, his expression unreadable. The nurse handed him paperwork. Insurance forms, emergency contacts. He took them without question. Then Jake whispered against her neck, words that turned her blood to ice. "Daddy said he was sorry about the money. He said he'll win it back soon." Lena's vision tunneled. Tom had told him, had made their son carry the weight of his mistakes. She forced a smile, pressing a kiss to Jake's forehead. "Don't worry about that, okay? You just focus on breathing." Across the room, Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then stiffened. Lena didn't need to see the screen to know. Business. Deals. The life that had nearly bulldozed hers without a second thought. But when he looked up, his eyes locked onto Jake. Really looked at him. The way his small chest still hitched, the way his fingers clutched Lena's sleeve like she might disappear. Daniel's face changed. Something in it hardened. Resolved. He stepped forward, handing the nurse his credit card. "Whatever he needs. The best specialist in the state. Tonight." The nurse blinked. "Mr. Whitmore, with all due respect, his insurance doesn't cover what he actually needs," Daniel finished. His voice left no room for argument. Lena opened her mouth to protest, but Jake chose that moment to cough, a wet, rattling sound that made her stomach drop. Daniel was already on the phone, barking orders to what sounded like a private medical team. "Yes, now. And pull the files on Maple Street. Freeze everything." Lena's head snapped up. Maple Street. Her street. Their eyes met over Jake's head. Daniel's message was clear. This isn't pity. This is a reckoning. And for the first time in years, Lena dared a hope. The choice. The hospital hallway stretched too bright, too sterile. The fluorescent lights humming like a swarm of bees. Lena sat stiffly in a plastic chair outside Jake's room. Her fingers knotted together, so tightly her knuckles ached. Inside, doctors moved with quiet efficiency, adjusting IVs and murmuring terms she didn't fully understand. Albuterol, steroids, observation. Daniel leaned against the wall across from her, his suit jacket long discarded, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms dusted with dark hair. He'd been on the phone nonstop since they'd arrived, canceling meetings, rearranging his entire schedule. She caught snippets of conversations. "No, the deal can wait. Send the contracts to my lawyer. I don't care what it costs." A nurse pushed past him with a clipboard, offering Lena a sympathetic smile. "He's responding well to the treatment. You can go back in soon." Lena nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Daniel's phone buzzed again. This time, his jaw clenched as he read the screen. He muttered a curse under his breath before shoving it into his pocket. "Problem?" Lena asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted the answer. Daniel exhaled sharply. "My business partner. He's not happy about the foreclosure delay." Lena's stomach twisted. Of course. Money always won in the end. She straightened, forcing steel into her voice. "You don't have to stay. We'll be fine." Daniel's gaze snapped to hers, dark and unreadable. "I'm not leaving." Before she could respond, Ray's voices echoed down the hall. A man in an expensive overcoat stormed toward them, his face flushed with anger. "Daniel, what the hell is this?" The man, mid-50s, silver hair slicked back, glare between them. "You cancel a $20 million deal over some." His eyes landed on Lena, dripping with disdain. "Mechanic." Daniel stepped forward, blocking Lena from view. "Not here, Richard." Richard barreled on. "Do you have any idea what you're throwing away? That neighborhood is gold. Condos, retail space. That neighborhood is homes." Daniel cut in, his voice low and dangerous. "And we're done talking about it." Richard's face darkened. He leaned in, hissing, "You're making a mistake, one your father never would have made." The air between them crackled. Lena held her breath. Daniel didn't flinch. "My father," he said slowly, "would have been ashamed of how we got those properties." Richard recoiled. "What's that supposed to—" "Illegal foreclosure notices," Daniel snapped. "Falsified paperwork. Sound familiar?" Lena's breath caught. "Illegal?" Richard paled. "You're bluffing." Daniel pulled out his phone, tapping the screen before shoving it in Richard's face. A document flashed, legal jargon, but one phrase stood out. Fraudulent misrepresentation. "You're finished," Daniel said coldly. "The board's already seen this. Pack your office." Richard's mouth opened, then shut, without another word. He turned on his heel and stalked away, his polished shoes clicking against the linoleum. Silence fell. Lena stared at Daniel, her pulse roaring in her ears. "You knew?" Daniel ran a hand over his face. "Not until tonight. My lawyer dug it up while we were driving here." He met her gaze. "Those evictions? They were never valid." Relief and fury warred in Lena's chest. All the sleepless nights, the fear, the helplessness. It could have been avoided. A soft voice interrupted them. "Mommy?" Jake stood in the doorway, dwarfed by a hospital gown, and 4 taped to his small hand. His breathing was easier now, his cheeks less pale. Lena rushed to him, dropping to her knees. "Hey, baby, you feeling better?" Jake nodded, then peeked past her at Daniel. "Is that the man who fixed your shop?" Daniel crouched beside them, eye level with Jake. "Actually," he said, offering his hand, "your mom fixed my car. I'm Daniel." Jake shook his hand solemnly. "I'm Jake. Do you like dinosaurs?" Daniel's mouth quirked. "T-Rex. No contest." Jake gasped. "That's my favorite, too." Lena watched them, something warm unfurling in her chest. Then Jake yawned, leaning heavily against her. The nurse appeared, smiling. "Time for more rest, champ." As she settled Jake back into bed, Daniel's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, then at Lena. "I need to handle this, but I'll be back." She believed him. For the first time in years, she believed someone, and that was terrifying. A new road. The morning sun spilled through the hospital windows, painting the room in soft gold. Jake slept soundly, his chest rising and falling evenly for the first time in weeks. Lena sat by his bedside, her fingers brushing his curls away from his forehead. The doctors had assured her he'd be okay. Better than okay, even. Daniels, whatever it costs approach has secured Jake the best pediatric pulmonologist in Texas, along with a year's worth of top-tier medication. The door creaked open. Daniel stepped inside, 2 steaming cups of coffee in hand. He looked exhausted, his dress shirt wrinkled, his stubble darker than usual. But his eyes were clear. "Figured you could use this," he said, handing her a cup. Lena wrapped her hands around it, the heat seeping into her skin. "You didn't have to stay all night." Daniel shrugged, leaning against the windowsill. "Had some calls to make." She knew what those calls entailed. The fallout from Richard's ousting. The legal whirlwind surrounding the fraudulent foreclosures. The press release Whitmore Holdings had issued at dawn, announcing the immediate halt of all Cedar Ridge redevelopment plans, and the creation of a fund to help displaced families. Lena took a slow sip of coffee. "You really blew up your own project, didn't you?" Daniel met her gaze. It was a wrong project. Silence settled between them, comfortable this time. Outside, birds chirped, and the distant sound of traffic hummed like a lullaby. Jake stirred, blinking sleepily. "Mommy? Is it morning?" She smoothed his hair. "Yeah, baby, it's morning." Jake's eyes landed on Daniel, and he grinned. "Did you bring pancakes?" Daniel laughed. A real, warm sound Lena hadn't heard from him before. "Not yet, but I know a place with chocolate chip ones." Jake gasped, looking at Lena with pleading eyes. She mock-sighed. "Guess we're having pancakes." An hour later, they sat in a diner booth, Jake enthusiastically drowning his stack in syrup. Daniel watched with amusement before sliding an envelope across the table to Lena. She frowned. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside were 2 keys. One for the shop, a shiny new copy to replace the one she'd been using since her dad died. The other was unfamiliar. Daniel cleared his throat. "The shop's yours, free and clear. No more bank breathing down your neck." Lena's breath hitched. "And the second key?" "To a 1969 Mustang," he said, smiling. "Restored. It's parked out back." Jake hooped, syrup flying. "A car? For us." Daniel ruffled his hair. "For you? So you never feel trapped." Lena's vision blurred. She swiped at her eyes. "I can't accept this." "You're not," Daniel said simply. "It's already done." She studied him. The way his shoulders had lost their usual tension, the quiet certainty in his voice. This wasn't charity. This was a man who'd finally remembered who he wanted to be. Jake tugged her sleeve. "Mommy, say thank you." Lena laughed wetly. "Thank you." Daniel held her gaze. "There's one more thing." "Of course there is," she teased. He leaned forward, suddenly serious. "Let me take you both to dinner. A real one. No emergencies, no crises. Just food." Jake bounced in his seat. "Can we, Mommy? Please." Lena looked between them, her son's hopeful grin, Daniel's tentative smile, and felt something slot into place in her chest. "Yeah," she said softly. "We'd like that." As they stepped outside, the sun warm on their faces, Jake sprinted ahead to admire the Mustang. Daniel fell into step beside Lena, their hands brushing. Neither pulled away. Did this story remind you that second chances exist? Like this video if you believe in fresh starts. Share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more real-life miracles. Because sometimes, the best roads are the ones we never saw coming.